I hope everybody's doing well on this Friday night. I'm going to go enjoy my night, but I thought I'd hop on and do a quick casual stream just talking about the news from the day. Hell, we can even break down the news from the week because there is so much of it regarding Iran, regarding the progression of Trump's, view on a lot of these issues. So, I want to break down Zohran Mamdani's win, Iran over the past week, and then watch a little bit of this video from Ezra Klein. I love Ezra Klein, and he had Sarah McBride on his show. Sarah McBride is the first transgender congresswoman who got a lot of hate when she came in, despite being like, hey, I'm coming in to keep my head down. I want to live a completely normal life in Congress. I don't want to make it about my identity. And yet conservatives still continued to bully this transgender congresswoman, which is disgusting. They straight up would bully her with a certain bill. What's up, everybody? Great to see everybody in chat. I see Susie saying hi, Coco, Lynn, Twister. How is everybody doing? It's always great to see everybody. So if you missed the live stream and you're watching this after the fact, don't worry, we do live streams a lot. You can drop a like below, and you can make sure to subscribe with the notification bell on so you don't miss the next live stream. But in this live stream, we're going to talk a little bit about the Maga meltdown following Zohran Mamdani's win. I'm going to talk about my personal history with my family. My grandpa is from Syria. I don't know if you guys knew that. And my great-grandma right there is also from Syria. She moved a little bit after my grandpa. My grandpa moved first, and then his mom moved after. But we can go into a little bit of my family history. My family definitely went through some Islamophobia post 9/11 because they moved in the late 80s. My grandma moved in the early 90s, my great-grandma. So after they moved, they dealt with a lot of Islamophobia, and it's really interesting. One second. Sorry, it's not interesting. It's really disgusting, all the Islamophobia that has been going on directly due to Zohran Mamdani. You guys have seen it too, right? So let's just start here. Representative Andy Ogles said on Twitter, and Andy Ogles is from Tennessee. Anyone in Tennessee from the chat, go get your congressman and reel him in. He said, Zohran, quote, Little Muhammad Mamdani is an anti-Semitic, socialist, communist who will destroy the great city of New York. He needs to be deported, which is why I'm calling for him to be subject to denaturalization proceedings. Attached is my letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi. We have a sitting congressman calling for the deportation of somebody who simply won the mayoral race, won the primary for the mayoral race. Not even the mayoral race. He won the primary. And Representative Andy Ogles is out here calling to deport him. I think there would be a better argument for Andy Ogles being deported. He seems to be more anti-American than Zohran Mamdani. Absolutely insane. He says Zohran Little Muhammad, but then everybody doubles down. Look at Benny Johnson began to post 9/11, not even like memes, but NYC in 2001, we will never forget. NYC in 2025, elects Muslim jihadist. He's not a jihadist. What do they think this word means? See, look at this. Representative Andy Ogles then said on Twitter, deport Little Muhammad. And he posts the video of Zohran yelling down Tom Homan. He's saying, do you believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan? I don't think Tom Homan believes in any of the amendments, to be honest. But this says Zohran is more American than you will ever be, which is true. Mason said that on Twitter. Zohran is more American than he will ever be. Really quickly, let me run through this Substack post that we wrote yesterday. My team and I crafted this post. It says, my grandfather moved to America from Syria in the late 1980s. My father is Muslim, as is most of my extended family on his side. Growing up, I heard stories from my grandmother, my great-grandmother, about the rampant Islamophobia they faced after 9/11, being shouted at in public, subjected to hostile stares, and facing discrimination simply because of their faith or because they would wear a hijab. Genuinely, in the post-2001 era, anybody wearing a hijab was not very welcome in America. As a member of Gen Z, I genuinely believed we had moved past this kind of open bigotry, but apparently I was wrong, because as we've seen over the past few years, this kind of bigotry is becoming more and more accepted due to the permission structures from top-down leaders in the Republican Party. Think about Obama's claim to, sorry, no, not Obama. Think about Trump's claim to fame in 2012. It was claiming that Obama was a Muslim who wasn't born in the United States. Trump's entire claim to fame in American politics was Islamophobia. Hannah, thank you so much for the $10. My therapist told me to find a community with like-minded people, and I found one. Thank you for covering all this insanity and making me feel less alone. That means more than you know, Hannah Montan. Genuinely, what a sweet comment. Absolutely amazing. Karen, thank you as well. Y'all are the best. It's always fun to hop on. Okay, to continue. Look at the grotesque reaction from Marjorie Taylor Greene and her fellow MAGA extremist following Zohran Mamdani's victory. Greene posted an appalling image. It was like an AI image of the Statue of Liberty in a full-body burqa. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen a politician post, and just straight Islamophobia. Genuinely, Zohran is more American than any of these people. Wait, this wasn't the one, but this was somebody else that posted something similar. This random manic account on Twitter posting the Statue of Liberty in a burqa, this was also posted by Marjorie Taylor Greene. But to continue, this isn't subtle political commentary. It's racism, xenophobia. It didn't stop there. Laura Loomer then suggested another 9/11 was imminent, explicitly blaming it on Zohran's election. Others warned that New York would turn on full jihadi Marxist. Who do these people think? Here's a Substack in the chat, but who do these people think Zohran is? Like, if I look up a photo of him, I did this in the video the other day. He's genuinely one of the happiest, smiliest dudes in all of politics right now. Like, every photo of him, he has this like warm smile on his face, which granted, you can be a smiler and still be a bad person, but just look at his policies. Look at how he carries himself. He's not this quote unquote jihadi Marxist that conservatives are claiming he is, but continuing. Oh my God, I didn't even see this one. Representative Andy Ogles posted here, bye-bye, little Muhammad. If you lied on your N400 naturalization forms, you're going home. He didn't, but right here we see an AI image of Andy Ogles saying deport. Dan Goldman, my bad, says, absolutely disgusting and unacceptable, says Representative Goldman. Whatever you think of Zohran Mamdani's politics, there's absolutely no place for this kind of hate and bigotry. Representative Ogles loves to get attention by being inflammatory, but all you do is expose yourself as an asshole. Very, very true. Some Trump supporters said, I don't think America's largest city should be run by a Muslim socialist. Burbank says, Trump with no plan to make groceries cheaper. I'm going to make groceries cheaper, and the right cheers. But Zohran with a plan to make groceries cheaper, and the right is complaining. It's absolute absurdity. And it's like pure racism. There is a massive difference between having a normal policy disagreement with somebody, which is totally fine. You can have a normal policy disagreement and say, I disagree with the way that he wants to get here. I disagree with this end goal. Because there are certain Zohran policies that I think lack the funding mechanisms to get into place, and he needs to refine them a little bit. Meaning, I agree with a lot of Zohran's end goals. A lot of them are great and noble and will help New Yorkers, but the way he wants to fund them needs a little bit of work. For example, with one policy, he wants to raise the state taxes, but he's the mayor. He will be the mayor if he wins. As the mayor, you don't have the capacity to raise state taxes. So that's the one thing where I'm like, you got to find a better funding mechanism for this exact policy because you're relying on something that's out of your control. That's very different than me, using Islamophobic rhetoric, which obviously I would never do. Charlie Kirk then piled on, in 9/11, on 9/11, 2,700 people died. Now we elected someone, and this is supposed to be beautiful. Charlie Kirk again said, on 9/11, 2,700 people died. Now 20 years later, we're electing a Muslim. That's supposed to be beautiful. To continue, Richie Torres said, it is no secret that I have profound disagreements with Zohran Mamdani, but every Democrat and every decent person should speak out with moral clarity against the despicable Islamophobic attacks that have been directed at him. demanding the deportation of an American citizen simply because he is Muslim, or simply because he holds political views different from your own, is not only bigoted, it is profoundly un-American and fascist and authoritarian. Bigotry in every form should be rejected unequivocally. And this brings me on to one of my final points on this topic. Every time I do these right-wing debates, or I'm debating Trump supporters, they're always claiming that both sides are extreme. Both sides have extremists on them, when that's not true. I mean, okay, listen. People on the left, or the left does have people that are extreme, sure. But the right's extremists are in power on the right. Like, Donald Trump, in a top-down way, will make up nicknames for Zohran, will make up lies about election fraud, and will cheer on violence in the form of Nancy Pelosi's husband being beat. People on the left, or if we have far-left people who are extremist and violent, it's either like Zohran, who's not extremist, he just wants, they call him extreme because he wants affordable living, or if somebody's actually extreme, they're not voted into power. I mean, call me when the most extreme people on the left are voted into power in the Congress. And the point here is, when we have Representative Andy Ogles, the Andy Ogles dude was the one who said Zohran Little Muhammad should be deported and is anti-Semitic. From a top-down manner on the right, we have sitting senators, representatives, congressmen and women, the president's cabinet, Stephen Miller. They are advocating for violence. The people on the left are completely shunned out if they act on violence. Like, Gavin Newsom will immediately say, don't burn down cars and buildings. Didn't Trump invite the leader of the people who hit the Twin Towers to Camp David? Trump has mingled with a lot of people who are un-American and anti-American. Trump has also legitimized Kim Jong-un on the global stage. In his first term, when Kim Jong-un was frozen out, he went and decided to meet with him, and he got nothing out of it. How about now, when Vladimir Putin was frozen out of the global stage by Biden, and by the Biden administration, and by NATO, Trump comes back in and brings Vladimir Putin back into the fold. All right, we talked a lot about Zohran Mamdani and the absolute racism. We talked about my Muslim family and how it relates. I want to talk a little bit about Representative Sarah McBride, because this ties into the attacks on minorities over the past few years. Representative Sarah McBride is the first transgender representative. She's a transgender congresswoman, and here's what the deal is. Here's my take. The situation with Sarah McBride is a perfect microcosm of the bigotry on the right, because one transgender congresswoman, just one, entered Congress, and she said, I want to keep my head down. I don't want to talk about my identity. What did right-wingers do? They introduced an entire bill targeting this one transgender congresswoman. An entire bill targeting this one person. Just think about how sick that is. That's like bullying on a congressional level. And then, after that bill is introduced, every single Fox News person in the country, every single Republican in the country is eating dinner with their family thinking about Sarah McBride in the back of their mind. So right-wingers have a way of taking trans people who just want to live their lives and blowing them up into national stories. Now, all the people who are here, I urge you to stay and watch this with me. Ezra Klein is a New York Times journalist who I respect a lot. This guy is really good at what he does, really good at really good in writing and interviewing, and I want to watch his interview with Sarah McBride and where we should go from here as Democrats. This talks about where the Democratic Party should go on trans issues in particular, how we approach trans issues, coming from the only transgender congresswoman, Sarah McBride, who, in my opinion, I think is good enough to lead the way and provide moral clarity on trans issues for the party, because it's coming from lived experiences here. Let's watch this.
So Donald Trump, in his inauguration speech, was perfectly clear about what he intended to do.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Starting the day of that speech, Trump launched an all-out effort to roll back trans rights, using every power the federal government had and some that it may not have.
President Trump has signed an executive order which declares the U.S. government will no longer recognize the concept of gender identity.
President Trump directing the Secretary of Education to create a plan to cut funding for schools that teach what he calls gender ideology.
Very quickly, thank you guys for being here in the first place. Someone said, Love these streams. We have a bunch of likes. Let's get to 2,000 likes. But someone also said, lib tears tasting good today. What lib tears are you talking about, homie? Donald Trump is historically unpopular. He's only rivaled by him in his first term in unpopularity. Donald Trump is absolutely losing grasp on everything going on worldwide. And people in chat are saying, please don't, you're going to say, please don't focus on the trolls. But I'm not even focusing on the trolls. I'm trying to prove a point to Trump supporters here. When it comes to the war in Iran, Trump has absolutely bungled it. There are reports that within 6 months, we'll have to strike again because the nuclear capacities are still being built up. He pulled this into a war after saying he was no new wars. He also said he would end all the current wars. Ukraine is still going. Prices are higher. Oil prices are going to be higher due to all the messing around that he's doing. We can even talk domestically, even beyond foreign policy. We can talk about the bills, all of the bills that Trump has passed, which is zero. So when you're talking about lib tears, remember, at this point in Biden's term, I'm pretty sure Biden had 2 big bills passed, COVID relief and the American Rescue Plan, at this point in Biden's term, so 4 years ago. Trump can't even get shit through Congress. So the Trump supporters in chat who are saying lib tears taste good, Trump is the one who is crying on a daily basis about not being able to get anything done. Trump is the one who's crying as the president of the United States, saying that, you know, he's being targeted by everybody. How is the president still being targeted? He's got an eternal victim complex. That being said, let's continue to watch this interview of Sarah McBride, the only transgender congresswoman, and she helps guide the way on where Democrats should go regarding these issues.
This afternoon, President Trump makes a move to ban transgender athletes from competing in women's sports.
Ban on gender-affirming care for transgender kids.
A ban on gender-affirming care for transgender inmates in federal prisons.
Ban on transgender troops serving in the military.
These executive orders, many of them have not actually gone into effect yet. But when I look across the country, we're already hearing the stories of impact.
It's a complete dehumanization of transgender people. It's about privacy and dignity for me to be able to change my passport to male.
It's going to come along with having to out myself to like Border Patrol agents.
We are begging to be allowed to continue our service, and you're just going to wash us away.
A lot of the things Trump is doing in this term have put him on the wrong side of public opinion. But not this. In a recent poll where Trump's approval rating was around 40%, 52% of Americans approved of how he's handling trans issues. And if you look more deeply into polling on trans rights, the public has swung right on virtually every policy you can poll. Banning trans medical care for minors, that's a majority issue now. A few years ago, it wasn't. Trump didn't just win the election. He and the movement and ideology behind him have been winning the argument. Sarah McBride is a freshman congresswoman from Delaware, where she was formerly a state senator. She is the first openly trans member of Congress, and her view is that the trans rights movement, and the left more broadly, has to grapple with why their strategy failed, how they lost not only power, but hearts and minds.
We have to grapple with the reality of where people are beyond this room or this city or my state. Meeting people where they are is not selling out. It's what this work is.
I was struck talking to McBride how much she was offering a theory that goes far beyond trans rights.
Sarah McBride is an absolute G. She's a great leader. Like, she's really, really good at what politicians are supposed to do. And this is going to be the overarching theme throughout this episode. As we're breaking down Sarah McBride, what she views as the way forward with trans Americans and how to message around it. But yeah, I mean, let's continue.
What she's offering is a counter to the dominant political style that emerged as algorithmic social media collided with politics. A style that is more about policing and pushing those who agree with you than it is about persuading those who don't.
She's really good at persuading people, is the point I was trying to make. Rather than, shutting people down or finger wagging or saying that these conversations aren't worth happening, she has the conversations. And I already saw someone in chat said, Adam, like, good job selling out or whatever. People always say that. Anytime we want to have conversations, people always say, like, you're selling out or whatever the hell. No, we're not selling out for, like, the point of a politician is to have tough conversations with people they disagree with. sometimes people on our side in particular, and on the right as well, of course, but I talk about the right all day. Sometimes people on our side can be like, we don't want to talk about issues that make us uncomfortable, but Sarah McBride leading the way. Let's watch.
Sarah McBride, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to begin with some polling. So Pew asked the same set of questions in 2022 and 2025. And what it found was this collapse in, I would call it, persuasion. So they polled the popularity of protecting trans people from discrimination in jobs, housing, public spaces. That had lost 8 points in those 3 years. Requiring health insurance companies to cover gender transition lost 5 points. Requiring trans people to use bathrooms that matched their biological sex gained 8 points. When you hear those results, what to you happened there?
By every objective metric, support for trans rights is worse now than it was 6 or 7 years ago. And that's not isolated to just trans issues. I think if you look across issues of gender right now, you have seen a regression, right? Marriage equality support is actually lower now than it was a couple of years ago in a recent poll. We also see a regression around support for whether women should have the same opportunities as men compared to 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so there's a larger regression from a gender perspective that I think is impacting this regression on trans rights. But I think it has been more acute, more significant in the trans rights space. I think, just candidly, I think we lost the art of persuasion. We lost the art of change making over the last couple of years. We're not in this position because of trans people. There was a very clear, well-coordinated, well-funded effort to demonize trans people, to stake out positions on fertile ground for anti-trans politics, and to have those be the battlegrounds rather than some of the areas where there's more public support. We're not in this position because of the movement or the community, but clearly what we've been doing over the last several years has not been working to stave it off or continue the progress that we were making 8, 9, 10 years ago. And I think a lot of it can be traced to a false sense of security that I think the LGBTQ movement and the progressive movement writ large began to feel in sort of the post-marriage world. I think there was a sense of cultural momentum that was sort of this unending cresting wave. I think there is this sense of sort of a cultural victory that lulled us into a false sense of security and I think in many ways shut down needed conversations. And I think, the support that we saw for trans rights in 2016, 2017, it was sort of a mirage of support in some ways, because I think there was, in the post-marriage world, there was a transfer of support from the LGB to the T, I think for 2 reasons. One, I think people said, well, the T is part of the acronym, so I support gay people, so I'll support trans people. It's all the same movement. But 2, I think in those...
One thing I will say, we'll return in a second, but one thing I will say is I really like what she was saying about the art of persuasion and the fact that a lot of people have lost the art of persuasion on our side. So people would rather shout down if somebody disagrees slightly on something. Rather than approaching with a little bit of empathy, I see people on our side, on both sides as well, but like on our side shouting it down or trying to purity test or just say, I'm morally better than you, rather than approaching it with a little bit of empathy. And Sarah McBride will continue to touch on this over and over. She says, we've lost the art of persuasion. We've lost the art of persuasion. Persuading is what we need to do. And, this reminds me of this video of me talking to this Trump supporter a few years back. And when I was talking to this Trump supporter, I asked him, this is one of my first ever Trump supporter interviews. Watch.
What % of Americans do you think are transgender?
I would say before it was cool to be transgender, or before it was probably like, I would say 1.5, and now it's probably like 20%.
20%? Well, it's still 0.5%.
20%. He thinks 1 in 5 people are transgender.
Okay. I was pretty close on 1.5.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. If an adult goes to the doctor with gender dysphoria and they try to decide on a treatment, do you think the government should be able to step in and stop that?
Oh, no, not if they're paying for it. As long as, they have their own insurance that they're paying for. I don't think a state, health insurance should have to pay for your, your gender reassignment.
So you're okay with people getting gender-affirming care, though?
Oh, yeah, as long as I'm not paying for it.
There's this whole new wave of eradicate transgenderism, which I think is too far in the opposite direction.
Yeah. I have nothing against, gay people or whatever you claim you are. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to live just the same every day.
This country.
What's up, Angry Ginger? Yeah, so this was one of my first interviews. This guy, first of all, thought 1 in 5 Americans were transgender. This dude said 1 in 5, which is absolutely insane. But also, going back to the Sarah McBride thing, the Sarah McBride video, she talks about the art of persuasion and just talking to people, and it's really, really important. Guys like that aren't hateful. Guys like that literally said, I don't care what somebody does. I literally don't care. But he just is obviously brainwashed by Maga media. I'm not going to say this guy is some like evil human being. I genuinely think he just watches Fox News and gets brainwashed about, number one, how many trans people there are. Number two, like he probably doesn't even know any trans people in person, which is insane.
Early days after marriage, a lot of people regretted having been wrong on marriage in the 90s and in the 2000s. And they went, I didn't understand what it meant to be gay, and therefore I didn't support marriage. And
Someone said, he's not hateful, but he supports a hateful person. He may not be evil, but he's not a saint either. You're missing the point entirely. It's not about whether he's a saint or not. It's about the fact that there's a shred of humanity here, and if you approach these conversations with a little bit of empathy, you just talk to somebody a little bit, then you can reach across the aisle. And Sarah McBride will say the same thing. She will say the same thing. Just talk with empathy. Someone in chat said, why apply empathy to hateful people? Because you can win people over through empathy. You don't want to create a feedback loop where everybody just gets more and more hateful. Yes, I'm not talking about KKK members. We're not talking about having a KKK member over for dinner. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying a lot of people are just misled and need moral clarity. Let's continue.
Regret not supporting something because I didn't understand it. So I'm going to, without understanding, support trans rights because I don't want to make that same mistake again.
I have no empathy for them. I'm not saying you need to be empathetic. I'm saying you have to approach conversations with a little bit of empathy because that's how you make people think. Yes, thank you. Hear it from Sarah McBride. If you disagree with me, you're disagreeing with Sarah McBride. You can't talk to MAGA. You absolutely can. I've shown you all clips of me winning over Trump supporters time and time again. This idea in chat, people are saying, one second. People are trying to imply in chat, everybody who supports MAGA is an awful person who needs to be absolutely shut out. This is what Sarah McBride is talking about. I'm so sorry. When she says we've lost the art of persuasion, and then people in chat are saying we don't want to persuade these people, they're terrible anyways. You have to understand, there's an art of persuasion that's politics. We win people over. Watch this one.
Funding of Ukraine.
No, I don't think that should happen.
Why not?
Because we need to take care of America first.
I'd make the argument that funding Ukraine is exactly how we put America first, because a lot of people think we're sending cash bags, but we're sending old military equipment, right? And after we send that military equipment, we get to create new American jobs to restock and repile that.
That's a good point.
On top of that, do you think Vladimir Putin's our enemy?
Not really.
Really? Why not?
Because I think he's trying to run his own country, and he's not. I don't think he is a threat to America.
It's okay that he's running his own country, but the problem is when he starts to invade other countries next to him. So we should protect our allies, essentially, right?
I agree. So that's like us trying to invade Canada.
And that wouldn't be okay.
Right.
So to piece my argument together, we're creating new American jobs, and in the process, we get to protect an ally, a sovereign country, Ukraine, from, I think Vladimir Putin is a dictator. He's a threat. He's not a good guy. So I think we're protecting America's interests. I think this is exactly how we put America first, right? Can you see that point of view?
That is a very good point. That's a good point. You've educated me a lot. I appreciate that.
Awesome, and we're both coming from the same point of view of putting America first.
Right.
How can we put America first on the world stage? And sometimes it scares me when they say we put America first by letting Vladimir Putin do what he wants. That doesn't make sense.
Right. How old are you?
21.
You're very wise for your age.
What do you think? So this was a good conversation. And if you guys in chat are going to continue telling me I have no empathy, this is a terrible human being, then I'm sorry, but you're just not interested in winning and you're not interested in persuasion. If you're going to watch that video and say it's not worth talking to people like that, if you're going to watch that video and say he's a terrible person, it's not worth it, then I'm sorry, you aren't interested in winning. or building a coalition. You're interested in acting like you're morally better than everybody else. I see this all the time in chat. They'll say, there's no point in talking. We're already better than them. They're dumb. We already know better. And it's like, we live in America. We live in a country that was built off of discourse and disagreement. And it is very, very short-sighted to just act like you are better than everybody and there's no point in talking about it. So a lot of people are happy about that. Thank you. Someone said empathy, people. Exactly. See, I applied a little bit of empathy in this. And it's by having empathy, it's not me like falling over my feet to praise Trump. Someone in chat earlier said, I'm not going to have empathy for fascists. And it's like, come on. You can't broadly paint this guy as a fascist. It's insane how people just refuse to apply any sort of like decency or common sense. And people in chat will say all MAGA are absolute scum of the earth. I mean, just watch that video. We're all Americans. We can all chat. How about Stephen Miller? Of course, Stephen Miller is different. When I'm talking about applying empathy to Trump supporters, I'm talking about the people who are voting for like lower grocery prices. Again, I'm not saying you have to have Stephen Miller or a Nazi member in your kitchen. I'm not saying that. But yeah, you need to be able to convert folks and hear it from transgender Congresswoman Sarah McBride. For all the people telling me that I'm just wrong, I mean, think about what trans people have at stake and think about how this feeds here. Listen.
Again. And I think that resulted in a lot of us, a lot of our movement stopping the conversation and ceasing doing the hard work of opening hearts and changing minds and telling stories that over 20 years had shifted and deepened understanding on gay identities that allowed for marriage equality to be built on solid ground. And I think that allowed for the misinformation, the disinformation, that well-coordinated, well-funded campaign to really take advantage of that lack of understanding. And the support on trans rights was sort of a house built on sand.
I want to connect two things you said there, because I hadn't thought about this exactly before. So you made this point that there's been a generalized gender regression, which is true. And you also made this point that people had this metaphor in their minds that I was wrong about gay marriage. I didn't understand that experience. So maybe I'm wrong here too. But that one thing maybe that's different here is there's a set of narrow policies here, like non-discrimination, and then a broader cultural effort, right? Everybody should put their pronouns in their bio or say them before they begin speaking at a meeting. It was more about destabilizing the gender binary. And there, people had a much stronger view. Like, I do know what it means. I've been a man all my life. I've been a woman all my life. How dare you tell me how I have to talk about myself or refer to myself? And that made the metaphor break. Because if the gay marriage fight was about what other people do, there was a dimension of this. It was about what you do and how you should see yourself or your kids or your society.
I think that's an accurate reflection of sort of the overplaying of the hand in some ways, that we as a sort of coalition went to Trans 201, Trans 301, when people were still at a very much Trans 101 stage one. And then two, I think there were requests that people perceived as sort of cultural aggression, which then allowed the right to say, we're punishing trans people because of their actions rather than we're going after innocent bystanders.
I really like what she said there when she said we were trying to teach like Trans 103 and 104 or whatever, when it's like people weren't even aware of 101 yet.
Some of the sort of cultural mores and norms that started to develop around inclusion of trans people were probably premature for a lot of people. We became absolutists, not just on trans rights. I think across the sort of progressive movement, we became absolutist. And
you're either with me or you're against me. You disagree with me on one single thing, then you're gone. Like, have you guys ever seen that on our side? I see it sometimes in the comment section. I can't remember. One time I said something very milquetoast. It was like, yeah, I really think Biden was a great president, but he's a bit old now. And someone was like, you're against us, Adam. And it's like, I just said Biden's a bit old. Like, you can't purity test me for this.
Forgot that in a democracy, we have to, one, grapple with where the public authentically is and actually engage with it. And I think, we and part of this is fostered by social media. We sort of decided that we now have to say, and
you guys are missing the point, man. As a gay man, don't expect me to empathize with homophobia or homophobes. The point is that you don't have to go up and empathize with people. I'm just saying when you're having conversations, apply a little bit of empathy. As Sarah McBride is saying, you're also being absolutist right here. I'm not saying that you have to go up and empathize or be friends with homophobic people. Of course not. Fuck those people. But just don't be absolutist and say that every single MAGA is not worth talking to. Like, listen to this.
And fight for and push for every single perfect policy and cultural norm right now, regardless of whether the public is ready. And I think it misunderstands the role that politicians and, frankly, social movements have in maintaining proximity to public opinion, of walking people to a place. We should be ahead of public opinion.
You guys are wild. Benny Loco, I would like to see Adam after he's drafted on a battlefield with his empathy. What are you talking about? There's a difference between applying empathy to American politics and trying to revert back to an empathetic thing and being on a battlefield. Of course, if I'm on a battlefield, number one, we've went very wrong at some point there. Number two, if I'm on a battlefield, of course I'm not going to be applying empathy. You use different tools in different scenarios. You guys are wild. And you're being absolutist. This person is basically saying there is absolutely no scenario where I'm going to apply empathy to a Trump supporter. And they're saying, I'd love to see you trying that on a battlefield. You guys get what we're saying here, right? A lot of people in chat, I'm going to say it, not a lot, I'm going to say maybe 2% of you are kind of absolutist. You guys are kind of absolutist. Not you guys. I'm just saying whoever said that.
But we have to be within arm's reach. If we get too far out ahead, we lose our grip on public opinion and we can no longer bring it with us. And I think a lot of the conversations around sports and also some of the sort of cultural changes that we saw in expected workplace behavior, et cetera, was the byproduct of maybe just getting too far out ahead and not actually engaging in the art of social change making.
The position for more maximalist demands is one that you need to be in a hurry. Trans people are dying now, suffering now, and that there isn't time for decades of political organizing here. And also that maybe it works, right? Or maybe there's a reason to believe it works. So you've been in more of those spaces than me. How would you describe how this sort of more maximalist approach and culture evolved and why?
Well, first off, I think you're right. It is understandable. I mean, this is a scary moment. I'm scared. As a trans person, I am scared. And I recognize that when the house is on fire, when there are attacks that are dangerous, very dangerous, that it can feel like we need to scream and we need to sound the alarm and we need everyone to be doing exactly that. I get that instinct. I understand it. I understand that people would say, if you give a little bit here, they'll take a mile. We're not negotiating with the other side, though. In this moment, we have to negotiate with public opinion. And we shouldn't treat the public like they're Republican politicians. And when you recognize that distinction, I think it allows for a pragmatic approach that has the best, in my mind, the best possible chance of shifting public opinion as quickly as possible. It would be one thing if screaming about how dangerous this is right now had the effect of stopping these attacks. But it won't.
You call it a sort of abandonment of persuasion. Yes. Became true across a variety of issues for progressives, also for people on the right. And sometimes I wonder how much that reflected the movement of politics to these very unusually designed platforms of speech, where what you do really is not talk to people you disagree with. It's talk about people you disagree with to people you agree with, and then see whether or not they agree with what you said. And there's a way in which I think that breeds very different habits in the people who do it.
I think that that's absolutely right. I mean, again, we're not in this place because of our community or our movement, but clearly we aren't in this place because we weren't shaming people enough, because we weren't canceling people enough, because we weren't yelling at people enough, because we weren't denouncing anti-trans positions enough. I think the dynamic with social media is that the most outrageous, the most extreme, the most condemnatory content is what gets amplified the most. It's what gets liked and retweeted the most. And people mistake getting likes and retweets as a sign of effectiveness. And those are two fundamentally different things. And I think that whether it's subconscious or even conscious, rewarding of unproductive conversations has completely undermined the capacity for us as individuals or politically for us to have conversations that persuade, that open people's hearts and minds, that meet them where they are. And I think the other dynamic that we have with social media is that there's sort of two kinds of people on social media. The vast majority of people are doom scrollers. They just go on and they scroll their social media. 20% maybe are doom posters. 10% on the far right, 10% on the far left. The people who are so strident and angry that they're compelled to post, and that content gets elevated. But what that has resulted in for the 80% who are just doom scrollers is this false perception of reality. Take a person, let's say they're center left, and it gives them a false perception of everyone on the left believes this, and it pulls them that way. And then it gives them a false perception that everyone on the right believes the most extreme version of the right. And it creates this false binary extreme perception, availability bias, because all of the content we're seeing is reflective of just the 20%. And it's warped our perception of reality. It's warped our perception of who people are and where the public is.
Thank you, Jerome. And thank you to Desmond.
One of the best things about being an elected official is that I have to break out of that social media echo chamber, that social media extreme world, and interact with everyday people. And you see, yeah, there are real disagreements, but that 80% of the doom scrollers or the people who aren't even on social media are actually in a place where we can have a conversation with them.
When I ask this question, I don't just mean on trans issues, but you represent Delaware, which is a blue state, not Massachusetts blue, but blue. If you took your sense of what Democrats want or what the country wants from your experiences on social media versus your sense from traveling around your state, how would they differ?
I think they would differ in two ways. One, they would differ in the issues that we would focus on, right? What you hear on social media is a preoccupation with sort of the most inflamed culture war issues that you almost never hear when you're out talking to voters in any part of the state. What you hear is a understandable catastrophizing around democracy, which you don't hear nearly as much when you're out talking to voters. What you hear when you're talking to voters is you hear about the cost of living. You hear about the bread and butter issues that are...
See, speaking of absolutism, this thing in chat, the Nerd Nest, first of all, thank you for being here, but this is an absolutist comment. Adam needs to interview Ward Churchill. He's right about everything. He says the United States is the worst country in the history of the world and needs to not exist. That's extreme as hell. What do you... I think the United States has its flaws, but I think overall we have the ability to do more good than harm if we play our cards right. John Little, thank you so much. Just want to say you're in my top 3 news people today. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate that, John. But to the person that just said the United States needs to not exist, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit of a patriot. Well, I'm a patriot in the sense that I genuinely believe in the First Amendment and the Constitution, and I want to restore our democracy. Not a patriot in the sense that I'm going to like drive around with a big truck and a flag and act like I'm a patriot. Yeah. It's not only that's extreme. Someone says, I agree that that's extreme. It's not only that that's extreme, that's a losing argument. I understand that this might be popular on like online to say that America needs to not exist anymore, but if you're going to go out and try to win power as a Democratic politician or any politician, and the platform you're running on is that America doesn't need to exist, you're just going to lose. It's insane. Someone said that in chat like a minute ago. You can scroll.
Keeping people up at night, people who aren't on social media or aren't posting on social media. And so you hear a difference in...
Ashamed to call yourself a patriot? No. What? I said I'm a huge patriot. I said it openly, but I said I'm not a patriot like you. I'm not a patriot like Trump supporters, whoever just commented that. Because you guys say you're a patriot, yet you will shit on the Constitution the second Donald Trump says. You will follow Donald Trump into the Capitol as he tries to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. I'm a patriot in the Mike Pence sense. I'm a patriot in the sense that I want to preserve what we've built, not destroy the country.
In priorities, but then you also hear a difference in approach. People are...
You're being trolled? No, I'm not being trolled. MAGA supporters in chat are arguing with me, and I argue back. It's not always me being trolled.
Hungry for an approach that doesn't treat our fellow citizens as enemies, but rather treats our fellow citizens as neighbors, even if we disagree with them. An approach that's just an approach that's filled with grace. And I think on social media, we have come to this conclusion, rightfully so, that people's grace has been abused in our society.
This is what she's saying. It was kind of what I was saying a minute ago. Just approach people with some grace. This doesn't mean, I'm just going to clarify, this doesn't mean Stephen Miller has to go and walk in your house and be friends with you. Someone in chat said, what about Stephen Miller? This does not mean Stephen Miller has to be friends with you. This means when you're talking to your coworker who you know is a decent person somewhere in there and who has 2 kids and a wife, you don't call them like a dipshit. You just approach with some empathy.
As enemies, but rather treats our fellow citizens as neighbors, even if we disagree with them. An approach that's just an approach that's filled with grace. And I think on social media, we have come to this conclusion, rightfully so, that people's grace has been abused in our society. That the grace of marginalized people, the patience of marginalized people has been abused. And that is true. But on social media, the course correction to that has been to eliminate all grace from our politics. It's, how dare you have conversations with people who disagree with you? How dare you be willing to work with people who disagree with you? How dare you compromise?
I've gotten that before in the comment section. I think I played a clip of me debunking Joe Rogan sometime, and someone said, how dare you play Joe Rogan on your show? It's like, you've lost it. Joe Rogan's way bigger than me. We're just debunking things.
How dare you seek to find common ground with Republicans? And I think when you go out...
People in chat were saying that like a minute ago. How dare you approach... I don't know. Most everyone in chat is on the same page, but some people were saying, you know...
Into the real world, Democrats, independents, and Republicans, there is a hunger for some level of grace, for us to just not be so angry at one another and miserable. They want to see and know that we actually do have more in common, and therefore it gives you hope that persuasion is not only necessary, but can actually still be effective.
What does grace in politics mean to you, and when have you either seen it or...
Someone said, this is ridiculous. We've already done this with Trump supporters in our own lives. Has that ever helped change their viewpoint? You might be a little bit late, but I did show you a clip a bit ago, a straight up clip of me changing a Trump supporter's mind. And I'm not saying that's going to happen every time. I'm not saying he was a converted liberal, but I approached a convo with grace and it worked. And I'm saying if we did that on a broad scale, if a bunch of like-minded individuals on a broad scale approach things with grace when we need to, and you know what's hard? You have to know when to not have grace. If you're talking to somebody and they drop like a racial slur, no, you don't have grace for that person. But if you're talking to somebody and they're just a little bit confused, they're just like, yeah, I thought Trump was going to lower the price of groceries, but now I'm not so sure. Just have some grace and explain to them. She's in Congress. Yep, listen.
Experienced it.
I think grace in politics means, one, creating room for disagreement, assuming good intentions, assuming that the people who are on the other side of an issue from you aren't automatically hateful, horrible people. I think it means creating some space for disagreement within your own coalition. I think it's a kindness that just feels so missing from our body politic and our national dialogue. And And look, I saw it in the Delaware State Senate on both sides of the aisle, whether it's in Republicans in Delaware joining on to be co-sponsors on an LGBTQ panic defense bill that I was the prime sponsor of, whether it was the discourse being much kinder and more civil on a whole host of even culture war issues. I saw that grace have the effect of lowering the temperature, removing some of the incentives to go after vulnerable people in this country, in our state.
Thank you, Deanna.
I saw it with my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle who didn't vote for bills that were deeply personal to me, and yet we still found ways to work together. We still found ways to develop friendships. And look, I know that places more of a burden on me than it does on them, right? I know that when you're asking a marginalized person to extend grace in a conversation, you're asking much more of that marginalized person. But change making isn't always easy, and it's not always fair. And why would we expect that the extra burdens and barriers of marginalization would cease at the point of overcoming the marginalization, of creating the change necessary to eliminate prejudice and create equal opportunity in our society? No, that's where the barriers are going to be greatest. That's where the burdens are going to be greatest.
It reminds me of a line that I hear it less now, but I used to see it a lot, which is, it's not my job to educate you.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought about that line because on one level, I understood it. I mean, it's probably not your job to educate anyone. And then if you're in politics, if what you're trying to do is political change.
It always comes with a little bit of condescension, though.
I always found that line to be almost anti-political.
Yeah.
Right? That if what you want to do is change a law, change a society, change a heart, and you're the one who wants to do it, well, then whose job is it? And who?
Someone in chat, I think, is trying to make a transphobic comment, but in doing so, I think made like a pro-trans comment. Maria said, dressing like a woman or denying what you were born as is not our problem. Thank you. That's the whole argument we've been making. It's nobody's problem. It's not your problem either. If it's not your problem, just let people live how they want to live. Let me pull this comment up. You can see it right here highlighted. It says, dressing like a woman or denying what you were born as is not our problem. Isn't that pro-trans right there? You're basically saying that it's not our problem. Let people do what they want to do. That's the point we're making.
Who are you expecting to do it?
It's an understandable frustration, but it's the only way forward. And look, I don't believe that every person from an underrepresented or an unrepresented community needs to always bear the brunt and burden of public education, right? Like, I don't believe that every LGBTQ person has to be out and sharing their story and doing all of that hard work. But for the folks who are willing to do it, we need to let them. And one of the problems we've had is that we've gone from, it's not my job as an individual person who's just trying to make it through the day to educate everyone, to no one from that community should educate. And frankly, no, we should just stop having this conversation, because the fact that we are having this conversation at all is hurtful and oppressive. And maybe it is hurtful, but you can't foster social change if you don't have a conversation. You can't change people if you exclude them. And I will just say, you can't have absolutism on the left or the right without authoritarianism, right? The fact that we have real disagreements, the fact that we have difficult conversations, the fact that we have painful conversations is not a bug of democracy. It's a feature of democracy.
This is why I'm going to be doing a lot of debates over the next year and a half. I mean, as we head into the midterms, we're going to be scaling this channel, adding new contributors like Chris, like Aria, doing more in-person debates, in-person streams, pushing back against Maga, converting Maga, doing all of this to create an environment where we can, push back. She's doing great, though.
And yes, that is hard and difficult. But again, how can we expect that the process of overcoming marginalization is going to be fair? And I think the discourse has taken this understandable critique of society and the way we operate and the burdens we place on marginalized people. And we've somehow said, well, the one place that we have control over whether we allow for that marginalization is in the strategies we use to overcome it. We're not going to engage in that because it's sort of self-oppression. And I think that is such a self-defeating and counterproductive approach.
I've been thinking in the past couple of months, because we are in the most illiberal era of my lifetime in American politics. And I don't mean liberalism in the sense of supporting or not supporting universal health care, but in terms of due process, in terms of tolerance, in terms of the basic practice of politics and living amidst each other. And it's also made me think about the need to clearly define what the practice of liberalism itself is. What do you think it is?
I think it is the recognition that in a free society, we are going to live and think differently. I think it is the allowance of that disagreement in the public square and the tussle of that disagreement in the public square. And that is uncomfortable. That is not easy. And yes, there are going to be people in that conversation for whom it's going to be more difficult and more uncomfortable.
All right, it's Friday night, so I'm gonna go try to chill out for a bit. It's been a long week. I know it has been for everybody. If you want to watch the rest of this, I'm gonna link it in chat a few times. It's just called Ezra Klein on Sarah McBride, or Sarah McBride on Ezra Klein. You can look up either one of those. I'm linking it in chat now, just in case anyone wants to finish this. We were 24 minutes in, if you want to leave where we left off. I love all of you guys. Make sure you subscribe below if you haven't. We're going to keep relentlessly streaming, debating, doing all of this over the next few weeks. Be there or be square. Have a good weekend, everybody. Have a good night, especially.